Hello guys, one of the most useful apps I use to create my videos is PowerDirector. I've been exclusively using PowerDirector to edit my videos since 2015. This was one of the first relatively advanced video editing apps available for Android. Back in the day, we were restricted to apps that barely covered the basics like adding sound and trimming, but with PowerDirector all of that changed. We could now edit videos with multiple layers of photos, text, and audio tracks, as well as basic settings to retouch photos and videos. However, that was in 2015, and now there are way more options to edit videos on the go. But despite everything, I still use PowerDirector to edit all my videos, and here I will share with you my experience using this app for pretty much a decade. To begin with, the reason I edit my videos on a phone and not on a computer is because my computer is literally this thing from 2009, which I love a lot by the way, but it can barely handle Windows Movie Maker. And to be honest, even if it were a powerful machine, I would still use my phone since it's a bit uncomfortable for me to have to edit on something so big. And since I love editing when I'm away or when I'm cozy in my bed, PowerDirector came in handy for me. I always use PowerDirector in landscape mode. Some time ago they added the option to edit in portrait, which is cool and all, but I've edited in landscape for so long that it's hard for me to get used to another orientation. Of course, when editing in landscape, I can hear and control the stereo sound better. So for me, landscape is the winner. With this app, as I already mentioned, we can have multiple layers of videos and photos, which was extremely important for the type of videos that I started with on YouTube, which as you can see is draggable content. The ease of dragging files from one place to another and trimming them easily was something I was thankful at the time. Another great feature is that we can have multiple layers of audio, all with the respective waveforms, which is very useful when editing very long audios without getting lost. We can also control the volume of the songs at will. For example, when I want to mute certain parts of a soundtrack and raise the volume in other parts when necessary. PowerDirector offers many text and subtitle options with a large number of fonts. I remember when I started, there were only a few texts available, which you can still find there, but the selection of texts has done nothing but grow over the years. I even use them to create the thumbnails for my videos. We also have the option to add intros and outros to the videos. It's not something I use a lot, but it could come in handy for some cases. Something that I do use from time to time are the stickers that come in different categories and that sometimes I use to add certain effects when I want, though I still find them pretty limited. And many times I have to use green screen videos to get the results I need. Like it's the case of character auras, like this one of Cell using the Kaioken, which was originally an aura of a Super Saiyan, which I modify using the editing options that come with the app, like saturation, brightness, contrast, hue, tint, and more. There are also all kinds of filters which, when combined with chroma key, they end up looking horrible, so I would be careful there. Chroma key though is something I would like to see improved since the options they give you to control its intensity are somewhat limited, and color and object detection is not perfect, so you have to be a bit creative to work around using other features. Here, for example, I cropped the video to get rid of the noisy parts. There's an option to remove the background of photos and videos. For drawings and cartoons is more than acceptable, but it's not perfect since I have to use third-party apps to create transparent PNGs to use in my videos. Now, this also applies to people where the app does an okay job, but more often than not, edge detection is not ideal, and here you can see a large portion of the background was left out. A feature that I was asking for years and that has already been implemented is the ability to animate your media files, that is, making them move from one side to the other. Not long ago, at the end of 2022, I had to multiply a file frame by frame to give it a feeling of movement, sort of like old school animation. This was extremely tedious to do, but fortunately it's a thing of the past since they finally added the option to animate your media files. This feature is somewhat hidden from view, and to make use of it, first we go to the layer that we want to animate, click on the file, and two options will be displayed. Click on the rhombus with a plus on the right side of the screen to create the starting point from which the animation will start. While we are here, we can drag the starting point to the position we want, but to make it move, we need to go just a little further in the timeline to add another point using the rhombus. Drag the file up or down, and that's it. We just made this text come to life. From there, we can add more animation points, but that's up to you. In recent updates, they added a feature to voice text that you have created using the multiple artificial voices available. They do sound like robots, but they could be useful in some cases.
Just a text. This is just a text.
But this doesn't apply to text only. You can also change your voice for the voice of another person, and even change your voice for that of a woman. However, it's not perfect since the robotic tone is clearly noticeable. It's something that still needs a lot of polishing.
Max Payne, Bully, Black.
We can also add automatic subtitles, which could be useful for shorts, but for now only the classic animations are available, so apps like CapCut are a lot better in this regard. One really positive thing about PowerDirector is that unlike other video editors, it's compatible with a huge number of devices. Not long ago it was even compatible with Android 4.4 KitKat. Now the minimum requirement is Android 5, which is great if you have an old device, but the downside is that if you go and create an extremely long project and try to export it in 4K resolution and with a very high bitrate, certain devices may not be able to handle that task. And I speak from experience. When I used my LG G6 in 2021 to edit my videos, it really struggled a lot after I made it past a certain video length and a certain number of layers. Since I often use other apps in the background, I would have to close them to free up resources for PowerDirector. I even used the developer options to increase the resources available for PowerDirector, but it didn't work. And that wasn't the worst part. When trying to export videos in 4K with the highest possible bitrate, the editor would reach 70 to 80% progress and the phone wouldn't be able to handle that task anymore, prompting an error telling me to close background processes. What I had to do was leave the resolution at 4K, but lower the bitrate to low to be able to export it. That was one of the reasons I upgraded from my LG G6 to an LG V40. And to give you an idea, the G6 in terms of performance would be equivalent to a mid-range device. In Antutu, for example, it scores around 200,000 points. So if you have a phone with a similar score, you might have issues exporting very long projects at high resolutions. But the bad things are only about to start. The app has performance issues. For example, when I open a folder of photos or videos, it takes a while for the files inside to become usable. And you have to do this every time you want to add a new file to the timeline, which is a real waste of time. This happens even on a very powerful device like the Pixel 6 Pro. Interestingly, this didn't happen in the 2021 or 2022 versions, and it's something so obnoxious introduced in newer versions and that has to be fixed. Another issue I've noticed is that the longer and more complex the project, the more difficult it is to navigate around. While you can expect some lag, sometimes it gets so bad that you have to close the app. A very negative point to note is the gigantic number of annoying bugs that we will face. Sometimes the menu does not display correctly when clicking on a file, or when cutting clips or audio files. The changes are not displayed correctly in the timeline. When something like this happens, I used to close and open the app to fix it, but the bug would often return shortly after, and it was very frustrating to have to do that. However, I discovered that locking and unlocking the phone helps fix this and other bugs, and that saves a lot of time. Another bug that happens relatively often is that the audio speeds up on its own, and it starts sounding like a chipmunk. This can be fixed by clicking the undo button, but what I find unacceptable is the desynchronization of the audio with respect to the waveform and the video that we're editing. Just listen. See, this artificial voiceover doesn't play correctly, and to prevent this from happening, I have to add points and spaces to the script, giving PowerDirector enough time to finish reading the text. But this happens with my voice too, and it is very annoying. And when you want to be precise with some layer of video or photo, you have to export the video to really see at what exact second I have to put the photo or file so that in the final video it displays said file in the right second. The worst thing though is that I was not fully aware of this bug, and in my old videos you may notice some desynchronization, and those are the things I didn't notice at the time, like what happened in this video. Other consoles, the emitter works really well, but however, the bugs I mentioned are minor compared to those that directly ruin your projects. This way I constantly have to duplicate my projects in case some bug comes and destroys all the work I did. This is something very obnoxious and that has made me waste dozens of hours of editing. There are several of these kinds of destructive bugs around. Here, for example, my entire LG G6 project was completely ruined. For some reason, all the audio files in this project have lag and some weird television noise. I don't know why this is, and it's definitely not a corruption issue with the original audios, since I did test them and they sound perfect. Then I tell myself exporting the video might fix it, but no, even the final video has that weird television noise. To be totally honest, bugs are the biggest problem with PowerDirector. And this app has so many great features and characteristics that you probably won't find in another Android editor. But these damn bugs totally ruined the experience. The PowerDirector team needs to wake up and release an update focused 100% on fixing these bugs. With every new update, they fix some, but often introduce new ones. With the KitKat video, for example, I had to deal with a bug that would take me back to the beginning of the timeline every time I enter full screen mode. And this bug has already been fixed, but since it was in plain sight, I think the PowerDirector team doesn't even take the time to test the app properly. They release updates and add new features very often, but bugs that have been there for years remain unfixed. And this is one of the reasons why I've considered stopping using PowerDirector more than once. But since there are not many options on Android and I don't have money for a good computer, I've, calmed down a little. And speaking of money, this app has the free option that limits some features and adds a watermark. In the past, you could buy the app to get rid of the watermark and some other limitations, but ever since it became a subscription app, that's no longer possible. From my experience and that of others, even subscriptions have bugs, and they don't restore your purchases correctly, so you have to deal with the watermark even if you paid for the subscription. I used to be a paid user, but PowerDirector really messed it up there. And I got so angry at them, I started using modified APKs that come with everything unlocked. It's understandable that certain things like stock footage, like music or videos, are subscription based, but forcing us to pay subscription to access features that don't depend on third parties, even for users who already pay for it, is insulting. Despite everything, I still like PowerDirector, and I will continue using it for a while. I guess I'm like the girl who goes back to their abusive boyfriend expecting things to be different this time. And well, in my case, I just hope they'll fix the bugs and that horrible subscription model. And with that, the editor will shine again. I hope you like this review, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.